friends, it's Sarah, and as it's still the beginning of the year, sort of, I wanted to talk about all the books coming out in 2025 that I'm super excited to read. This video will just cover the first half of the year, so books being published from January to June, and then I'll make another video later in the year to talk about books being published from July to December, because there will still be a bunch of books being announced throughout this first half of the year for this latter half of the year. So that'll be later. I've got 14 books that I want to talk about, and I'm going to be doing these in chronological order by when they are going to be released. Yeah, Parsnip's going to join us for this part of the video. So here she is. So first up is a book that I actually managed to get an ARC of, which was super special. Thank you to Penguin for that. But that is Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales by Heather Fawcett. This comes out February 11th. This is the third book in the Emily Wilde series, and it was a 4-star read for me. I really enjoyed it. I love this series. I think it's really fun. It again features the adventures of Emily Wilde, our grumpy Fae academic, and her colleague Wendell. I don't really want to say too much about the plot since it is the third book in the series, but let's just say this one is a little bit more like relationship and character focused. There's still like an adventure, but there's more of like Emily trying to figure out where she fits into in this new world that she has found herself in. Up next, we have One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This by Omar El-Akkad. This comes out February 25th. And it is a nonfiction book about reckoning with what it means to live in the Western world. This started initially as a tweet that read, "One day when it's safe, when there's no personal downside to calling a thing what it is, when it's too late to hold anyone accountable, everyone will have always been against this." It's a chronicle of the growing rupture between the ideal of the Western project and the Western life and the increasingly untrustworthy institutions that actually exist and form our society. And it is a book for everyone who wants something better than what the Western world has offered. I've heard lots of people rave about this book, and I think it sounds really interesting, so I'm excited to read that. The next book that I'm looking forward to is called On the Clock by Claire Baglin. This comes out March 5th, and it's a literary fiction story told in 2 different timelines. The first follows the 20-year-old narrator's summer job at a fast food franchise, and then the other one shows us moments from her childhood with her family, focusing specifically on her father, who is a low-paid but devoted electrician in a factory. So overall, this book compares 2 different experiences of underpaid and underappreciated work, one as a career with the dad as the electrician and one as a temporary summer job. And being someone who works in retail, this feels quite applicable, so I'm interested to see what it's like. The next book is being published March 11th, and that is Malinalli by Veronica Chapa. This is a kind of fantasy historical fiction novel, so it's a retelling of the real-life Nahua interpreter who helped Hernan Cortez communicate with the native people of Mexico. She was kidnapped into slavery by 12 and has to fight to survive the cruel world brought about by both the Spanish conquistadors and Moctezuma. But in this book, she's also blessed with magical powers and vows to help defend her people's legacy. Sounds really interesting. I haven't read a lot of books that feature like indigenous Mexican people, so I think that sounds like a really cool twist on a historical fiction novel. Up next, one of my most anticipated books of the year is Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green. This is being published March 18th. It's a nonfiction book, and you all know John Green. He's written a ton of teen novels like The Fault in Our Stars, Turtles All the Way Down. He also wrote a quasi-memoir called The Anthropocene Reviewed, which I loved. But this is a nonfiction book about when he met Henry, who was a young tuberculosis patient in 2019 when he was visiting Sierra Leone with Partners in Health. This inspired a deep interest in the disease and its treatment, and in the ensuing years, John Green has become an advocate for increased access to treatment for tuberculosis and wider awareness of the healthcare inequities that allow this curable, treatable infectious disease to also be the deadliest, and it kills 1.5 million people every single year. This book tells Henry's story and explores the way that tuberculosis has shaped our world, as well as the ways that we can choose to shape the future of tuberculosis, because it is curable, and really it's just inequality that is preventing us from eradicating this disease. So I'm really interested in that. I have had the chance to hear him read the first chapter a couple different times, but it's great. I really enjoy John Green's writing, and I think this will be a very interesting book. And it's become a little bit of a hyperfixation for him because, like, as the title suggests, everything is tuberculosis. So he can, like, relate almost everything to tuberculosis, and he's just like me for real, because when I get a hyperfixation, I can also relate everything back to my hyperfixation. So, very relatable. Up next, a book that I think is probably on almost everyone's most anticipated of the year list is The Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins, coming out also on March 18th. We have been blessed with another Hunger Games book from Suzanne Collins. I don't know if she's running out of money or if she's just back in her groove, but this one follows Haymitch Abernathy, who is Katniss's mentor, if you don't remember that from the first games. And this is when he had to participate in his own Hunger Games. This time it's a quarter quell, and twice as many tributes are going to participate. So he has to leave his home and the girl he loves to fight 23 other children. Yay! And so we should find out why he is the way he is. I mean, it's touched on in the original Hunger Games trilogy, but I'm really interested to read a book where Haymitch is the protagonist. Up next, another one of my like top most anticipated. Man, March and April are just going to be like all the good books at once. It's going to be a struggle, but a great struggle. But we have Holy Terrors by Margaret Owen. This comes out April 1st, April Fool's Day. This is the third and final book in the Little Thieves series, which I love so much. In this one, someone is killing royalty and leaving our main character Vanya's signature red penny on the victims, so suddenly her alter ego of the Fenegeist is no longer a folk hero, but a nightmare. When even the Blessed Empress falls, the Empire's 7 royal families must gather to elect her successor within a matter of weeks, or risk the collapse of reality itself. And in this book, Margaret Owen shows us the pain and beauty of choosing which demons to face and which to forgive. I'm really excited for this one. I think Margaret Owen has such an interesting way of writing complex characters who make a lot of mistakes, but are ultimately worthy of our love. And I just hope the best for Vanya, because man, that girl has gone through it. And I'm like, you can heal and you can have happiness. I believe in it. So fingers real crossed. But Margaret Owen also likes to torture her readers a bit. So a little worried about this one, but I think it should be fun. All right, also on April 1st, we have Swept Away by Beth O'Leary. I have a little bit of a rocky relationship with Beth O'Leary. I really adored the Flat Share and the Wake Up Call, then felt kind of lukewarm about the Switch, like it was fine, but didn't stand out to me, and then really disliked the No-Show and the Road Trip. So I'm really hoping that her newest is going to be another like top tier Beth O'Leary romance, but it follows Zeke and Lexi, who have a one-night stand on his inherited houseboat, and afterwards they realize that neither of them tied the boat to the dock, and now they're adrift at sea, and they have to figure out how to get home. It's like an extreme version of the forced proximity trope. It sounds really interesting. I'm intrigued to see how much is like a kind of survival navigation story and how much is like, you know, the romance. If done well, I think it could be quite interesting. If done poorly, I think it could end up being a case of like, oh my god, you're gonna die, quit kissing. So fingers crossed it is the former and not the latter. All right, next up we have When the Tides Held the Moon by Venessa, Vida, Kelley, coming out on April 22nd. This is an adult fantasy set in Coney Island in the 1910s, and it follows Benny Caldera, who is an orphan blacksmith. He ends up creating a tank for the sideshow that performs at Coney Island to hold a live merman that they've taken from the East River, and soon he strikes up a friendship with the merman, who is called Rio, and develops deeper feelings, of course. And these feelings mean that he can no longer ignore Rio's captivity and his own role in it. I think this book also has like a bunch of illustrations, which is like really fun, but it sounds like really interesting historical fantasy romance, and I'm intrigued to see how it goes. Another top most anticipated is the new Emily Henry, Great Big Beautiful Life, also coming out April 22nd. This one follows 2 authors who are competing to write the biography of an heiress and former tabloid darling. She's also the daughter of one of the most notorious families of the 1900s, and they have a 1-month trial period to prove themselves to the heiress, after which she will choose which one of them gets to write her story. And as they unfold the mixed up pieces of her life, they start to fall for each other. It sounds really interesting. Emily Henry has said it's pretty different from her other books. There's like a third story in it that's not their romance, and it's maybe a bit more towards like the literary genre or just like general fiction and not as much of a romance. I mean, it's still gonna be like very romantic. It's giving me a little bit like the 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo vibes, so I'm very intrigued to see Emily Henry's take on this. All right, then we have What Happens in Amsterdam by Rachel Lynn Solomon, coming out May 6th. This is a new romance from the author of Weather Girl and Business or Pleasure. I really love Rachel Lynn Solmon's books, and they just keep getting better and better and better. This book follows Dani, who moves to Amsterdam after a rough end to a relationship, and she literally runs into her high school ex-boyfriend. He needs to get married in order to inherit his family home, and Dani needs a visa, so they end up getting married, and this marriage of convenience might just be the second chance that they need to heal from old wounds and rekindle their relationship. All right, then Taylor Jenkins Reid also has a new book called Atmosphere coming out on June 3rd. This is another historical fiction novel from Taylor Jenkins Reid, but this one is set in the 1980s space shuttle program, and it follows primarily Joan Goodwin, who has applied to be one of the first women scientists to join NASA's space shuttle program, and during the course of the novel, she meets and trains alongside a wacky group of candidates as they form bonds and prepare for their first flights. This sounds a little different from her other stuff, not so much following like celebrity or musicians or anything like her previous really popular novels have, but I'm interested to see what she does with a bunch of little nerdy scientists during the space shuttle program. Alrighty, number 13, the penultimate book is A Forgery of Fate by Elizabeth Lim, coming out on June 3rd. This is a new teen fantasy inspired by Beauty and the Beast from the author of Six Crimson Cranes, and it follows Truyan Sagas, who is a talented art forger who can paint the future and uses her talents to support her mother and sisters after the loss of their father. She ends up having to enter into a marriage of convenience with the Dragon Lord, who says he will protect her family, give her answers about her father's disappearance, and in return she will join him in his undersea palace and help him infiltrate the Dragon King's court. Sounds really interesting. I'm not sure if it's a standalone or if it's a series, because most of her other ones have been at least a duology, if not a trilogy. But it sounds really cool, and I'm interested to see an Eastern reimagining of Beauty and the Beast, because that is my favorite fairy tale of all time. The final book that I am super excited to read in the first half of the year is Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab, coming out June 10th. I believe I should be getting an arc of this. Fingers crossed I haven't jinxed myself, but I'm really intrigued by this. I loved The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I liked The Darker Shades of London. Like, I read the first one and then kind of continue on, but this one I think is closer to Addie LaRue, so I'm hoping to also really enjoy it. And I'm just going to read you what the blurb says. It says, Santo Domingo de la Calzada, 1532. London, 1837. Boston, 2019. 3 young women, their bodies planted in the same soil, their stories tangling like roots. One grows high, and one grows deep, and one grows wild, and all of them grow teeth. I've also seen it described as like toxic lesbian vampires inspired by Florence and the Machine, so I mean, does it get better than that? I don't think so. I'm not too sure what the plot is or anything. There's not a ton of like super in-depth information about it, but hopefully I'll get that arc. I can read it and let you know how it is, because it sounds real dark and twisty and fun. Those are all the 14 books that are being published in the first half of 2025 that I'm super excited about, some of which I've already pre-ordered, some of which I haven't yet, but might later. But I think it's going to be another great year for publishing, and I'd love to hear what books are on your most anticipated releases of the year. Let me know down in the comments if you have any of the same as me or different ones that I maybe haven't heard of yet. I'd love to hear it. I'm always adding books to my TBR, which is probably a problem, but it's fine. We don't worry about that. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you next time. Now go read a book. All right, Parsnip is joining us. Parsnip is going to join us. Oh boy. We're excited about one more time.